Hey everyone, welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast, the premier podcast for single player gamers to find out about good single player games to play and, just have fun discussions, deep dive episodes into the dope games that we do play. And that's what we're going to do today because we're going to talk about all things Horizon Forbidden West, The Burning Shores, the DLC pack that came out semi-recently to PlayStation 5, and we're going to give all of our deep dive opinions on that. But I know you notice, if you're watching on video, that I am not alone in this nature because you already know he is part of the Pro Nerd fam. He's part of the Single Player Experience fam. We like to have him on as much as we possibly can. I absolutely adore this guy. His views in gaming, whether or not we agree on everything or not, they are always well-founded, always backed. I always like having him on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, my special guest today is none other than Alejandro, the X-Button himself, Segovia. How you doing today?
How you doing, Sebastion? Glad to be here once again for the monthly check-in.
Yeah,
like I like calling it.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like a doctor's appointment.
Oh yeah, the monthly check-ins to like dissect our favorite or not favorite video games. So
I like that. So, before we dive into the topic of the show, which is Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores, we'll just say Burning Shores because that title's getting a little long. But what have you been playing lately?
So recently, I reviewed Jedi Survivor for Season Gaming. You can check my review over there at seasongaming.com. And as I'm waiting for the big game coming this Friday, for everyone that wants to know, we're recording the week of that ends on Friday the 12th, which is when The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is coming out. Mm-hmm. I'm playing an older one. I'm actually going through The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker,
Okay.
The GameCube version, because for some reason Nintendo just refuses to put out the HD version they once released on Wii U, on Switch. No, I had to like dust off my old Wii. I had to get like an HDMI converter so I could play it in its original form. And yes, there's Dolphin emulators. I am one that likes the original experience, like the original pure experience. So that's how I'm playing it. I'm a few early hours in. I want to see if I can get it done before this Friday. But then other than that, that has been just my two games. Like, my week was literally all dominated by Jedi Survivor. I beat it, I reviewed it, and I even got a platinum trophy out of it. That's how knee-deep I went into that game. But I'm going to save any conversation about Jedi Survivor for future consideration in this podcast until you play it.
Yeah, to completion. Until I play it to completion. Yeah. I want to ask you, so we did a deep dive into Jedi Fallen Order, and back then, you told me that you had played that game almost to death, and to the point to where like you played it. I want to say 3 or 4 times through.
Yeah, 3 or 4 times. I platinum it twice on PS4 and PS5. The Fallen Order one. So,
do you feel like you're going to do the same with Jedi Survivor?
I mean, it'll be harder to play it twice, to platinum it twice, because we only got a next-gen version, like only the current-gen PS5 version for that one. Like, I wouldn't mind doing it, personally, because it was a really damn good game. So,
yeah,
but I'm satisfied.
Would you see yourself playing it for, like, on the Xbox side of thing to get all the achievements, or on the Steam thing to get all the Steam
I can see myself doing that on Xbox, but wait more until I get an Xbox Series X, because I've seen the S version of that game, and it's a really pretty game that I don't want to like compromise in a way, so I'm gonna wait until I get that eventually. And the good thing is that with EA games, especially when you're on Xbox, eventually, because due to EA Play, they put older games through EA Play that you get with Game Pass Ultimate, so eventually it's gonna become free there.
Yeah,
I don't mind doing another run. That's how much I liked it. So
yeah, I imagine it took a little while for Jedi Fallen Order to get there. Yeah. I was confusing the names for a second, but yeah, it took a little while for it to get there, but eventually it got there. And I replayed that on Game Pass semi recently before we did our deep dive impressions, and really enjoyed my time with it again. I can definitely see myself wanting to play this on another console.
Yes, and I can't wait for you to fully beat Jedi Survivor whenever that happens. I would think you'll probably get through it within this week, let's just say. There's so much to talk about it. Me and my buddy Paul were at the Xbox, and we both beat it around the same time, and we actually recorded a spoiler-free and spoiler-filled episode just talking about that game, which turned out to be our 100th episode for the Xbox, and so it all lined up so perfectly. It was like right on our anniversary, which we started back in 2021 on May the 4th. We got to record a podcast dedicated to a Star Wars game on May the 4th. It was like I can't think of more perfect circumstances for both of us to have been able to cover that game. So check that out if you want to see like what my current full thoughts are after having reviewed that game and spoiling a lot of the stuff from that story. So
That's super sweet. So currently, outside of remakes, is that your game of the year?
yeah,
Yeah.
easy. Yeah, because
Easy.
how I said to Paul is like if I want to be like objective, what's like the best game that has come out this year without like any asterisks? You could probably say it's still Resident Evil 4, just
Okay.
like on polish and the full package and all that. Because Jedi Survivor is like, especially if you've been noticing anything about that game online, you probably heard that there's been some technical difficulties that game has had, especially on the PC side. The console side is like has been cleaner, but it's not been
Yeah.
as a super smooth experience. I know you told me that you early on like suffered some crashing and like the performance was like all jittery. He said yes, those problems are there. This is the rare game where I tell, especially on console, it's such a good experience that eventually you're gonna forget about those technical issues. It's that's how good everything is about that game. So, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm eager to dive more into it. What else are you playing right now?
Other than the things that I mentioned, it's just that because I'm thankful that it seems that all the big games that I wanted to play this year are all done.
Hmm.
Like, I finished Forspoken, I finished Dead Space, I finished Hi-Fi Rush, I finished Hogwarts Legacy, I finished Resident Evil 4 Remake, I finished Burning Shores, which was right. I finished it right before Jedi Survivor. So everything that I really cared about has been done, and the only game that I let go was Atomic Heart. So I'm glad that it feels like I've been more diligent because I created a bigger backlog last year when Elden Ring was happening because all those games that came after Elden Ring, which was like Stranger of Paradise, uh, Ghostwire Tokyo, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Kirby, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, all those games kind of piled up. I bought all of them, and
Hmm.
and I finished. I sporadically finished them, like I did recently with Lego Star Wars earlier this year. So I feel more responsible, but also thankfully none of these games have been that long. So
No, no,
yeah.
all curated like shorter
Yeah.
experiences in
The only one that
comparison.
was a little long was Hogwarts, but that one at least kept my interest to some extent because I
Mhm.
know that you and Paul were a little harder on it than I was.
Yeah.
But you had your reasons, but that's been like the only long game that I can think of because um we come from like the era like just in years past, how many long ass open worlds. I'm
Oh,
glad that
tons.
we're getting more like digestible stuff without feeling shortchanged. That's been like the sweet spot for me. So
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's been been in an era of like these big, large open worlds where like sometimes they hit just the right amount, and then a lot of the times we're a little like left lacking, especially when it comes to like I don't want to throw shade on like Ubisoft, but a lot of the Ubisoft style games we've
yeah,
kind of
those are the big offenders recently.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting year in gaming to where like, the AAA space is very much like dominated this
Hmm.
year's narratives. Like last
Oh yeah.
year, the indies had a lot of chance to shine and really break through, but you
Yeah.
know,
If it feels like if you remember the period from January to March of last year,
mhm.
that the exact same kind of like cadence of bing, 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 bing bangs that we got very early last year, it's starting now. But what happened from January to March was also really strong. So it's like it has carried a longer string of like quality, I would say, in 2023 than it was back in 2022. Because all the big stuff happened super early, and then we got like the big droughts afterwards, which were carried by the indie scene. If you're looking for new stuff once that drought hit, this feels like, man, we were eating good already, and now like the big hits are happening. It's like I can't imagine another year's gonna be like this, like it currently is. So
No, no, and the crazy thing is, as of this recording, like there's rumors that later on in the month of May we'll get a PlayStation showcase, and I'm excited.
yeah, do you remember when was the last one? I mentioned it in our chat. It
Mhm.
was back in September 9th, 2021, or September 8th. It was on one of those days. And for our buddy Paul, is like I always like to him to throw him so he could picture how long it's been. He was sheltering from Hurricane Ida because he was in Louisiana when that hurricane hit.
That's
It was like,
crazy.
it was their Katrina 2.0 basically. So that's why I always tell him, it's like the last showcase happened when you were sheltering and you were just getting out of sheltering from that hurricane. So that's how long ago it was. So
Yeah, that's crazy. It's gonna be really intriguing to see how what games are announced because I am excited. Do you have any early predictions?
right now, that the big thing with Sony is that now they're hitting at a point when their barrel is practically empty. At least from, and there's only like one indie game that we were talking about, Little Devil Inside, that was like from that early the Future of Gaming showcase they did in June 2020 when they revealed the console. That's when we got Forbidden West, Miles Morales, and like the big initial wave of announcements is like, now other than that indie that I feel like shouldn't get any more airtime to me personally. It feels like it lost its window. It's like the most Sony should give that one, unless they're like on a strict contract that they have to promote it to hell or high water, is that leave it to the PlayStation block when they finally have a release date. They already hogged space on the showcase. They hogged space in the State of Play back in 2021. And it's still not out. It's like, your time is up. New stuff. I want all new stuff, and I want to see how much that showcase mixes the tried and true single player stuff that we love from Sony, plus all the live service games that we know they're working on. That they said that they were gonna try to publish 10 live service games before 2026. At least that's what they said in like one of their financial reports. For like the big records they do like yearly when they like make prognostications for next year, they say by 2026 we're gonna be launching 10 live services. So I want to see which ones of those are, and at least soften the blow that those are not the kinds of games that I want from them, but still they're gonna give us the ones that we like. I want to see how they hit that balance. I am more curious for Xbox though, because
oh man, it's been a rough time.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, because I just played it briefly, and the things that I played, I did play Redfall, which you can play with Game Pass, and holy crap, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe how bad it was. Like, it's not hyperbolic to say. I think it is the worst high-profile game this year.
Yeah,
obviously because there's garbage over in Steam. Like, obviously there's objectively worse things happening because the Steam store is like so wide open and everyone can just shovel a bunch of crap there. But for Redfall, a game that, if you remember, back in 2021, that was their one more thing closer for the Xbox Bethesda showcase of 2021. The first big Xbox exclusive, like, announced after the acquiring of Bethesda, or the whole ZeniMax shebang. For it to come out like this is like, if they were trying to like offset any like the naysaying that's been happening that they're just gobbling a bunch of studios, but it doesn't feel like they're doing a good job of nurturing how much they have under their umbrella. This was like this coming out like it did gave all the ammo needed to show it as like, why would anyone want them to keep buying studios if this is what they're releasing? Is it because everyone has been shielding? I don't know if you've been hearing all this about Xbox can do really good stuff. I mean, they won the Metacritic like Publisher of the Year back in 2021. They were always using that defense of like, no, don't worry. It's like, when those games hit, look how well received those were. But then when you look back on what was well received in that 2021, it's like, Microsoft Flight Simulator, which was just the console release of a PC game that came in 2020. Psychonauts 2, which really great game. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that one. That was a really great one, but that was started development way before. That was kickstarted back in 2015. Obviously, they gave it money for it to like become a little bigger, give it extra time for it to become better. But that's not a product that was born out of them. Forza Horizon 5, really excellent, but that's kind of like praising with faint, like giving high praise with faint praise also at the same time, because like, what is the one franchise that has always been hitting for them during the dark times? The Forza series.
And like, how well can you make a car game at this point?
Exactly. Yeah, but that was a really good one. So yes, you'll get the flowers. And then Halo Infinite, which came in with an 87 Metacritic. It had an initial great start, but we kind of know how that game went as a live service. It's like everyone keeps one, and then Deathloop was technically them. And we know that Deathloop is one of those highly reviewed games that everyone has been like, now that the time has like settled down, we're like, you know what? That was kind of overrated. So
I like Deathloop myself, but
it's fun. It's fun. That's the thing. It's a fun game. Is it a 10 out of 10? No, not at all. And that's kind of what happened. It's like that game got like all the 10s and all that. But when the dust settled, you're like, no, it was really good. But 10 out of 10, I think we overrated a little bit. Especially how it's so the seats for what Redfall became. So.
I think the concept of Deathloop, at least like it's like the fact that you kind of had to like solve that Groundhog's Day style mystery and also figure out the visionary puzzles. Like I feel like the first playthrough ages well, but like it doesn't have any
it's afterwards. Yeah, it's and that's the thing. Like what made arcane games so great was the fact that even though they were technically linear games, because they were immersive sims, the beauty of the immersive sim genre is that there's many ways that you can make multiple playthroughs of something so fresh, because there's always different ways that you can approach anything. And that immersive sim element of arcane games was like lost in them, like focusing so much on the death loop. It's like, it's such a great first playthrough. Once you figure out the loop, there is there's no alternates for that loop. That's why I decided to not replay that game until my memory is like completely hazy, so I can go through that flow again. Because the one thing I'll give Deathloop is that it's so much fun. Shooting in that game is really fun. Moving in that game is really fun. I love Colt as a character. I love Juliana as like the back and forth banter in them was like actually really well written. I feel you that you're black. I feel like they represented black culture, the way the characters express themselves in a way that actually felt authentic, so which I appreciate that. It's just more that when you look back at Dishonored or even Prey, that felt so malleable and the things that Arcane did best. This was, I always call it, this was Arcane for dummies, which I bet a lot of people that reviewed that game was their first real taste of, oh, this finally feels like something that makes me understand a little bit of what Arcane does, and then going back to the better work, it's an even better experience because now the frame of reference is there. The problem with Redfall is that none of Arcane's strengths shine through, even after they promised it would. And I feel bad for Lord Cognito. You met him and one of the other lords back at PAX. He previewed that game, and he feels so sad that he feels like he got bamboozled when he went to preview that game, to what the actual game turned out to be. Because a lot of people came out a little positive out of that preview, but they say that they have never seen such a drop off of like the curated thing that they showed them and the game that they experienced. It's like, did I send you the clip that I took of the vampire T-posing like in broad daylight? It's like, there's just so many things that just don't make any sense in that game, and it's really sad. It literally the week before, I was telling Paul in our in our show when Microsoft got their Activision Blizzard deal blocked by the CMA UK. I was like, man, I hope Redfall is a win for them, because they feel like, you're being on the Xbox side, you feel like you're just taking L's left and right. You do. And that's just an extra L. Now it's funny enough, they re-emphasize the showcase they're doing. They usually do yearly showcases. If you notice that, usually it was like, tune into the Xbox and Bethesda showcase.
No.
This is the Xbox first time. Yeah, this is just Xbox now. So it's like, oof. So it's like, they know. It's like, the recent product. It's like they stumble into another Fallout 76. How does that happen? Especially now that you're technically being overseen by Microsoft, that technically should care about quality, but everyone that says that because they're focused on Game Pass is making them now the Netflix of games, even though they said that their big goal is that they want quality experiences that they're going to be giving people with the ease of access of that is Game Pass. It's like, at a certain point, it's like, we're reaching the point of you're getting what you pay for. And that's really sad, because I hate nothing more than the big three, that is Xbox, Nintendo, or PlayStation, one of them not doing really well. I need all of them to be doing well, because that's when we get the best work out of all of three. Competition breeds excellence.
I agree.
Microsoft stumbling like this is like, why would Sony even care? Now it's like, they're being like, they're barely doing anything. They're letting Microsoft just stumble like headstrong into the rakes.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like on a lot of fronts, because competition does breed excellence. Like iron sharpens iron. There's a lot of like sayings regarding competition. But like, I'm right there with you. I want all three to be doing well. I also want Xbox to be doing better, because like they are the closest people who also make Sony-like games in the sense to where like these big budget action adventure single player focused games, and and if they're stumbling to do that, and PlayStation is sort of moving towards that games as a service mantra for like half of their portfolio, I feel like that niche is going to be overshadowed a bit,
Yeah. And the irony with Xbox is that even though they have the capability and we know they have the money to be able to do like a Sony-style third-person action-adventure story-based game, we only know of one game in that style, and it's Hellblade 2, which is obviously a sequel from a game that they took off the market, because the original was originally a PS4 and PC game. The Xbox version of that came later, but then they pull up the big bucks and acquire Ninja Theory. It's like, they still, even with the money, they still haven't released a game of that caliber that rivals the Horizons, the God of Wars, the Last of Us, the
No,
Uncharted. Obviously, there's many people over on that side of Xbox. It's like, who cares? It's like, they're all the same games. Like, at least we have variety over here. And I'm like,
but they're the same games of quality, though.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. Those games are quality. Why wouldn't you want to have at least, like, yes, you have all the variety that you can have in all your experiences. Within that variety, you can have one of those. It's like Lord Cognito always says, the hashtag just one. Just
Yeah.
the hashtag just give me one of those. Since we already have like the big gamut of experiences that we're offering, it's like to Xbox benefits, at least them pursuing different kinds of games that adds to a healthy ecosystem. And one that I always say that if they were hitting it with consistency and quality, it would actually expose the Sony side of like, yes, the things that they're doing is quality, but it's just one note. Because they're doing they're all doing kind of like the same style of game, which at this point in time is working for them. I mean, God of War Ragnarok is like will probably be at 20 million sold before the year is gone. Spider-Man is going to be real strong for that. But I'm glad also Sony's at least willing to dip the toe outside of like the try and true because they know they do that so well.
Yeah.
And over at Microsoft, it feels like everything is very good at best, just not like a game changer or
not
great.
Yeah.
It's like. And I don't know how you could be like excited about that or satisfied with that, unless it's like, oh yeah, because you're paying Game Pass. So it's like yeah, again, you get what you pay for, no matter what. It's like sometimes that's what it is.
For sure. And it's also one of those one of the things that kind of bothers me about the whole scenario and is like worrisome for the long-term health of everything is like I want them to like I want Game Pass games to be good when they come out. I don't want a Sea of Thieves situation for every single game that comes out. I'm like, give it to me like good at launch. I don't need like 10 months to a year or 5 years with Sea of Thieves to be good.
Give me my meat full cooked, not 3/4.
Exactly.
like basically, no, don't serve it to me 3/4. Like when I asked you to give it fully cooked, and obviously there's many people that argue that the games as a service model is one that unfortunately is like it can never be fully cooked and has to be built upon. I'm like, you're making the choice of making that kind of game.
Exactly.
So it's like that's no excuse for me. And yes, they did turn around the ship, pun intended, with Sea of Thieves. Because that game was barren AF in a way that I remember when I played it back in 2018, which was actually the first Game Pass day one launch. So I was like, well, it's gonna be in Game Pass. This service seems cool. It's just $10. Let me try it. And then I tried it. I was like, what even is here?
Yeah.
It's like, this is so empty. But after expansions and years of support, it's like they did stick around to that game, and that's one of their most successful, most beloved games. Obviously, the critical stench of the early reviews, because you can never review something on like Metacritic. It has like a 69, nice score, like in the reviews. But that doesn't matter because they reviewed the product that was that game in 2018 to what it is now. That even had like a Pirates of the Caribbean expansion, which looked really cool, like just 2 years ago, and they still support it. It's like there's something like it's good that you can turn around a game. I feel like we're in the live service era that is becoming too much of a crutch.
It really is. Yeah.
That at a certain point, it's like some games are just not beyond saving. It's like when Anthem hit and it was a disaster. That was but like Destiny and all those games, they're gonna turn the ship around, and it never happened.
No.
With Avengers, another one that's like, look, the campaign early on was really good, but then the live service was just a complete disaster. But it's like if they keep like tweaking around and like clean up the things that are bad, eventually this is gonna be a really great game, and that ended up not happening. It's like it feels like though people use that crutch, but I feel like we're past the time where people are willing to give the chance to that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially if you've had so many of them, like if it's almost like if you were in a relationship and the person cheats on you over and over and over again, like you believe what's being put out there more so than what you hear about,
or basically it's like you entering different kinds of relationships that all cheat on you.
Yeah, exactly.
At a certain point, you're like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I feel that's where new live services are kind of hitting, especially if they're all trying to be the same genre. I got in with Destiny back in 2014. Perfect time for me to get in. That's my chick, basically. It's like even though we can sometimes go through some rough patches, like what happened with Lightfall recently. It's not because I have been committed to that for like 8 or 9 years. Like I don't need another of those kinds of games. Like just give me more variety. Give me other things that are more like fully cooked, more satisfying experiences from the get-go. Why was Jedi Survivor so damn good? Is because it was just that honest to goodness single player experience with no monetization at all.
Hmm.
And it was just, it had the purity of its experience. And in the 40 hours that I put into that game, from finishing its stories and cleaning up everything else, like, I feel I got my money's worth, and I'm glad. Like, I don't need Jedi Survivor to be a game that like keeps me entertained for the rest of my life. Like, there's there's good in finality. There's
No, there
something good
really
of like
is.
of a product that can give you like a full experience that leaves you satisfied, instead of one that wants to string you along through years long content updates for you to then try to squeeze you some money with like expansions or microtransactions. And obviously there's like, games are made obviously not just for the art but for the money. But I feel pursuing just that money, that long-term money, is like, it's just leading to this. And
Yeah.
Redfall, clear example, is like, the good thing about, even though Deathloop was their first time attempting online stuff, at the very least it's like it was still a one and done.
Oh yeah,
Like,
for sure.
it's a, now compare Deathloop now to Redfall, which they say like, there's like, it's clear that it's just trying to do the Destiny thing and Borderlands thing and doing it so bad. Just it's skewing everything that works so well for Arcane. It's a tragedy. It's like, to me, like, Redfall is an absolute tragedy that I did not see coming, because I wanted to believe that Xbox would have been smart to not put out a game like this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Knowing what the reputation has been, and after a year that was 2022, that on the heels of them winning 2021 Metacritic Publisher of the Year, then they delivered their most barren release in the almost 20 years of their existence.
Yeah.
And for one of those delayed games to come out like this,
Yeah, it's rough.
can you imagine what Redfall would have been last year if this is what we got now? It's like, it looks really bad. It really looks bad for them, and I can't wait to see how they PR their way out of it when they do their showcase this on June 11th,
Yeah.
which is on a Sunday. And especially because they cut out the Starfield portion of that showcase for it to be its own thing. The pressure for Starfield, my God,
It's immense.
it's
immense.
yeah. I've never seen it. This is like Atlas holding
Yeah.
the world. That's how Starfield feels. Because if Starfield doesn't hit,
Oh, it's
good,
gonna be bad.
good lord, it's like, if this week was already really bad for them, especially
That's
when,
yeah, that's
yes,
gonna be rough.
yeah. And do you see the interview Phil Spencer did with the X
Kind of
Cast?
funny, yeah.
Yeah. So some of the comments that he was making is like, I mean, I appreciate the candor, but holy crap, that sounds defeatist.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
just
And
like,
and I also, kind of disagree with the philosophy, some of the philosophy there, like
oh yeah,
especially
the great
when he's-
games,
Yeah,
the great
that's
games, and the
exactly
thing.
what he
Yeah,
said. Like, even if we make great games, no one's gonna like come over to the platform and such. I was just like, that's not true. I
no,
like,
it's like, if you make great games consistently,
oh yeah,
then people are gonna look.
oh yeah,
That's the
for
thing.
sure.
Is like, yes, it's like, just one great game is not gonna turn everything around. I agree there. The fact that, but the things that you should always be striving to at least put at minimum an 8, no matter what, like,
Exactly.
and make that consistent. Then people are gonna, when you amass a library, then that's when people are like, huh, it's not just one. There's a few over there. Even if this is not my main system, let me go check that out. It's
Exactly.
like, yes, and I do agree that it couldn't have been worse timing for them to have lost the Xbox One generation when they did that. I do agree with, because that was when digital libraries started to become a thing. That's when we knew that from that point onward, backwards compatibility was going to be a big thing, which they even started. They're the ones
Yeah.
that pushed that initiative for backwards compatibility in a way that they set the stage to entrench anyone into an ecosystem that almost all your entire library carries over, and that's actually pretty nice. And even on the PlayStation side, which I didn't have any hopes for backwards compatibility early on. I don't know if you remember when early on in the PS5 when it was revealed, they mentioned something like, we tested the 100 games that were popular and then we're gonna add them over time. I'm like, I remember when that happened, I was like livid. I was like, wait, you're just gonna have like 100 of those games like available at launch when your competitor basically has the entire catalog? That seems disastrous. And then when we got a launch, they were like, oh, actually only like 10 games that you probably don't care about didn't work. Everything else was like, okay, that's cool, because I invested so much money in my ecosystem. So it feels good to carry all of that forward and have like 600 plus games just in one system. So
It really does. It really does. It's one of those things to where I'm like, I'm right there with you. Like I actually play a lot more of my games, like third-party games, on Xbox, and it's just the fact that I know I'm always gonna have it with me, and it's also kind of what everyone knows me for in like as far as like review codes go, and like they always like, hey,
they send you the Xbox.
Yeah.
They send you the Xbox code more than PlayStation. Makes sense.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just one of those things to where I'm natively over there a lot, but like you said, I would prefer there to be a catalog of games on the Xbox side of the fence, on the Xbox ecosystem, that I already know are natively going to be good, and that I know like people are going to care about. Like I know like if one and dones, I care about them. That's my type of game in general. But like if you look at like the games that were on the Switch in 2017 and beyond, like they made people care about the Switch. I'm not even a native like
Nintendo guy,
gamer. Yeah, I'm not the like I'll play a couple here and there, but like Fire Emblem is probably my favorite Switch game of all time right now.
Makes sense. And
yeah,
that's a really meaty, really great RPG that they made.
yeah.
And the Switch, big example. The Wii U, no one gave a shit about the Wii U.
Still
the
don't.
Wii U, and still many don't. And many of those games that they ported over as definitive editions on Switch, now it's like they're like resounding successes now.
Boom.
But because it's like because of course the Wii U just wasn't a great console. The idea like how they promoted that console was like half baked. The whole having like a gamepad that was like an iPad was never like something that was a game changer like Nintendo really wanted it. And the thing that people used the Wii U gamepad more was to like play their games kind of like in handheld mode.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the idea of like the Switch would be like, you know what? The telemetry shows that what people are using the gamepad for more is just like the handheld, like the full console experience of a handheld, even though in that case it was tethered to the console that was like literally right in front of you. So that's kind of where the Switch was like, no, let's just double down into the things that at least the Wii U had the nice idea, even though that was not what we promoted for. And now look at the Switch. Nintendo was always great with handhelds, so we knew that at least when it came to handhelds, people trusted them. And with the Switch, they made their most powerful handheld ever. That just happens to be a console, and they doubled down on games, and especially early on. I mean, like, I made my diatribe like what I think about Breath of the Wild, but I respect what Breath of the Wild did. Is like that game resonated so hard with so many people. I mean, it sold 30 million copies alone. Can you believe that? Like 30 million copies. Do you know how much the best-selling Zelda game was before that?
No, what was it?
9 million for Twilight Princess back in the Wii. Imagine just what the jump was for both making a really cool gimmick this time, a gimmick that worked, and then having that Nintendo feel of quality of like, hey, we can still make games that then eventually go and inspire many things like they usually used to do back in the N64, Super Nintendo days. And no matter what, it's like it feels like at least when it comes to like big Nintendo games, Nintendo makes you care about that. It's like it's like you're at least regardless of what it is, you pay attention, and they did that with hard work. They just and also the nostalgia everyone had for the brand that helped them a little bit. But PS3, let's go back to PS3.
Yeah.
First half of that generation, a complete disaster for them. The 360 was eating their lunch and all that. But then Sony, even Sean Layden, the former president of Sony Interactive Entertainment before Jim Ryan took over, Crying Jim, he literally made a big speech back at, I think it was at one of the DICE Awards. He gave like a retrospective of like what PS3 was for them. Like he said, PS3 was our Icarus moment. We thought we were so big, we're too big to fail in PS2 that we got too cocky, and then everything like we lost big in a meaningful way that hurt our business a lot. But during that moment of hubris, we came together, we analyzed, and then we reshifted our focus for our business, which was like doubling down on first party. And that's when, around that time, that's when we got the Uncharted's, the Infamouses, the God of War kept going. That was like a carryover from PS2, but we started getting like the Sony exclusives started getting more of a weight, had a little bit more of a weight behind it. And of course, it culminated with The Last of Us. And now from that point onward, Sony like really during the moment when they were rebuilding, they became known as like the place for the premier exclusive title, and that carried them through the PS4 generation. But it started back then. How has Xbox tried to like turn the ship around after they went through their Icarus moment with Xbox One? It feels like they haven't had that. In fact, they just had to like pivot so beyond like what the other ones are doing with like, let's try to make everything more accessible and available everywhere. That was like the shift in philosophy, which, to be fair,
it's nice, but it's nice. Like it's an after feature. It feels like
exactly. Yeah, if that should feel like an additive that makes the quality of what you're serving even better. Because imagine if they had games that were of the quality that we know that's on PlayStation and Nintendo, on top of being so consumer friendly, and like we were talking when we were talking about Jedi Fallen Order the last time I was in the show, that it's like, you know, that if you're playing on one system, like through cloud and
it works
and everything, just with Xbox Series X and S and all of that, is like that just works. That's just so convenient. But that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, who cares about that if you're not delivering? Like, you're giving us all the appetizers. Where is the meal? where it's like the succulent meal.
Yeah, I'm
That
right there with
always
you.
that always feels like meal's not ready. It's coming soon. Meal's not ready. That's how it feels. So
No,
yeah, and
I can't take another like it's next year, next year, next year, next this like the next year is
I
gonna be
can't.
the year.
Yeah, I can't. I've been like on that boat since like 2018
Hmm.
because when 20 because I remember 2017 was the first drought the Xbox had because people forget as bad as the Xbox One was early on, 2013 to 2016 for them they had games.
Yeah, they had
That's
really good ones.
that's what's so crazy. That is like at the very least in that period when it was like at their worst, they were in transition. Is like we got our Sunset Overdrives, we got Rise of Rome, we got Quantum Break, we got Halo 5, we got like at that time the money had a Rise of the Tomb Raider. They got that. They got that there. They got Gears of War 4. They got Recore. They had the Forza, the whatever Forza was going at a certain year, either if it was Forza 5 or Horizon 2 or Horizon 3 or Forza 7.
They're all Forza. You're all
Exactly,
driving.
exactly. Yeah. So, but they had a catalog. The things that then once that catalog drew, like that's the irony. Is like they had a catalog at a time where Sony was still cooking. That was the irony because 2013 to 2016 PlayStation, people don't forget, like don't remember much how the PS4 was carried by third party and indies early on in that
Yeah, that life
that
cycle.
generation, and because they were letting their big games cook, and because they let them cook, then they had everything served up for 2016 till the end of that generation, and that's when they started dominating. And then like Microsoft like emptied their tank way too early, and they never filled it back.
No.
Which is ironic because they emptied their tank and then they released the most powerful console ever at the time, the One X, with no games,
And
like
no
with
one
literally no
cares,
games.
yeah.
Yeah, no one cared. So I can't believe that's still been going. Like in that 2017 of like, okay, they focus on launching this hardware. Next year is gonna be the year, and then okay, next year is gonna be the year. Okay, the next year is gonna be the year. Okay, we got a console launch this time. Okay, next that's gonna be the. They're gonna start with Halo. That's gonna how that's how it's gonna be like when they're gonna start filing. And they released a console without a game because of the delay for Halo Infinite after
Yeah.
Craiggate, like I got calling. So it's like I feel that this fan base is finally I can't imagine. I always said is like I like being console agnostic. I like playing all three. I like maining on PlayStation because that's where I build my library. So it's like I'm just gonna keep focusing. I was willing to switch. I was literally willing with all the nice things that they were saying. But at this point, it feels like at the very least, it's like Sony may be not doing great, but at least in the things that I care about, which is actually releasing games in a relatively consistent cadence, is like I know they have my trust as of this moment. Obviously, they can stumble. Everyone can stumble at any time, but with Xbox, it just feels like, come on, show me. Like, you just do something, please. Like, do something that's gonna like be Sony. They're the king of the mountain. They're just chilling, eating their fruit. Like, you're just being the king of the world. And then they're gonna hear like the battle sirens that there's someone's they're coming for the kingdom. It's like Microsoft is not willing to take the shotgun and just come in and blast it to Sony when they totally can.
Yeah,
I know they can. They did it with the 360.
Yeah,
where is that fighting
crazy.
spirit? So,
it's crazy. I just don't know because like it seems like like it's almost like Marvel had a plan with all their phases, and that's kind of what made like the MCU great, especially like during the Infinity War saga. It's like Xbox almost feels like
DCEU.
Yeah, yeah.
They're literally, if you want to make that analogy, yes.
Yeah.
But Sony is Marvel Cinematic Universe that they planted the seeds at the perfect time, and then everything flourished, and then DC has been trying to catch up and maybe try to do some different stuff to differentiate, and then try to catch up again. And we're seeing the results of that. It's like it's
sad. Oh, man. It really is.
It really is sad. And the things that the good thing with Microsoft is that they have so much money that any other company would be like in much more dire straits. And from what I understand, they're making more money out of Xbox than they have ever had, which is ironic because it's like, man, you're making more money when you're barely giving like fans anything, like something to like fully cheer you on. It always feels like it's always half steps. It always feels like it's half promises. It always feels like the promise of what's coming is like at a certain point. I feel like 2018 was when they started gobbling studios. That's when they recommitted to be like, oh yeah, we're actually gonna build a first party, because before that they only had 4 studios they own. That's nuts because they used to money had everything. But since those acquisitions, it's like you would think that with everything they've acquired since 2018 and they're still wanting to acquire, we would have had more than what we had.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Maybe in the future, whenever that future is, whenever they get into that cadence, then maybe we're gonna be like, okay, we went through that extended lull for them to finally hit this point.
Yeah.
That when then like one of those promises was Redfall, and this is what happened. It's like, how can I ever trust them? Like how can I? Like
it's we're down to show not tell. It's just it's a sad fact of everything. It's like we can't afford to just take you at your word. Like even with this conference coming out, like I need to get hands on with everything that they're talking about, and it needs to be like 7s and above. Like at this point, like
or 8 and above. I feel
exactly.
they've been releasing too many 7s. I feel like we need more 8s. You need your 9s. Like you absolutely need that, or 9s that actually feel like well-earned 9s. Because to be fair, Halo Infinite was rated 9s by some few, but I'm like that didn't age well, and that's sad for Halo, which was that kind of franchise. So yeah, that's why I'm like, this is the conference. I feel more than any other time, this is the make or break conference, especially since like all the bad PR that happened when they got cock blocked by the CMA, Redfall launching like this, Phil Spencer making that interview. Is like sentiment over an Xbox feels so low right now, and I really want to see what they have in store. Like, what are the things that show me there's more than Starfield this year? Please, just show me there's more. You had a promising start early on with that surprise arc with Hi-Fi Rush, but it took one stumble for all of that to be forgotten. Literally, it's like this is the same year we got Hi-Fi Rush when we were like early on. We were like, they're able to put this. Hi-Fi Rush was one of the great examples of like, okay, they might be cooking now. It's like I wasn't expecting this from them, but now it just feels like it was like you getting Andor after getting Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and all of that. So it feels like that, just like the one blip after like a sea of meh. Or it's don't let Hi-Fi Rush be like the only like high point of this year. Like, please, I want Starfield to be good. Like at least just to at least. I just don't want like this discourse surrounding Xbox, because I know the net negative it creates to the other ecosystems, because then they're going to become too comfortable with what they're doing. And I already feel that Nintendo and Sony have become too comfortable in just doing what they've been doing instead of like trying new things. So competition breeds competition. Microsoft, like, make it like Microsoft, just fight the proper way. Don't try to buy your way to the top, because it's clear that with all just you're managing, it's like we're not seeing the fruits. Like we just aren't.
No, I'm right there with you. I would love to see them get more hands on with studios to where like, hey, like we want you to I don't want to stifle creativity, but at some point you're good at what you're good at. You know what I'm talking about? Like I don't expect like certain people to make certain games and wouldn't want them to make certain games because that's not their bag. You know, like. And you know the good part about this industry sometimes is like there's a lot of companies. Like if you feel stifled making one thing and being like harpooned in that, you can always move over to another company. You know. I would prefer to see that rather than like, hey, like Arcane, for instance, and I don't want to just pick on Arcane, but like I would love to see what they can do with like a big budget stealth game, like a bigger budget stealth game
than what they even got with Dishonored and Dishonored 2. Like take those ideas and like explode it, especially because now you have Daddy Microsoft, which is funding your stuff, and they don't care about sales, they care about Game Pass. So theoretically, like, the beauty of like what we know about Game Pass is that you should be able to see like more of this creative outlet for studios to feel like they can do any game that they want without having to worry about how commercial of an idea it is if it's just Game Pass fodder. To be fair, like in the smaller scale of things, that's where Pentiment came, that's where Hi-Fi Rush came, that's where Grounded came, and that's cool and all. I'm glad that those games in the smaller side did really well, because those are games that you wouldn't expect from Microsoft, which I gotta give them flowers there. The thing is that they shouldn't be the highlight.
No,
those should be like the highlight appetizers to the main course meal. So you shouldn't like the bread with the butter to be the most tasteful thing of like a steak, like the one that you get. Like that shouldn't be the thing. So
you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it's one of those things to where I'm like, I look at games like Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, and Grounded, and while I enjoy some of those, like I don't really care about Grounded, but I like the other two quite a lot though. Like I want, you're right, I want more entrees. I want those to be snacks, and I want like, and PlayStation on the other side of the fence is giving us snacks and they're giving us entrees. Like if you look at whether like me and you have talked offline about this, like I know you weren't a big fan of Chia, for instance.
Yeah, I wasn't too hot on that one, and I was sad because I wanted it to be, but At least they served it.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's there.
and it's in a, like it's a timed exclusive for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's Stray the same way. Seafood was the same way. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they're still giving you snacks, even though there's a third party snacks. They're still giving you those.
Mm-hmm. High
And it,
quality snacks. I mean, look at Kina, my favorite
exactly.
of all of those.
Oh,
So
I can't wait if we get a Kina Bridge of Spirits
yeah,
2
I was
announcement.
talking with Paul about that. It's like I
Yeah.
can't wait for a sequel for that one. I was like, that was such a pleasant surprise back in 2021. So
I feel like that's going to be a part of the conference, but we'll talk about all that soon. But like,
mm-hmm.
if you're Xbox and you're like, I just want you to do better. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to like shit on you while you're down or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't want you to be down. Like, I'm
Yeah.
an Xbox gamer, just like I'm a PlayStation gamer, just
Yeah.
like I am an occasional Nintendo gamer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
want all three to do better. Like,
Exactly.
just
It's like taking away like console like war tribalism, which
uh
to me is so dumb. I'm like too old to like be like a part of that tribe, like the diatribes that happen in Twitter of like those uni senseis, the I love you, Lord King, but I know you like playing that
yeah.
bit also. But it's like that's the thing is like when you make that your personality, just kind of like if it's a freaking sport thing,
Mhm.
then at a certain point it's like you're cheered so much for a company that may not be doing as great as you want it to do, like, and that goes for everywhere. So I just want great games from everyone, and I want everyone to just be healthy, and in what they do, and not just settle, because right now it feels like Microsoft is just settling on second place or even third place if you want to, if you want to be. And I feel like I want a little bit more fight. I want a little bit more bite, but I want like a proper fight. I don't want you rigging the game. Also,
No,
be
for
like
sure not.
if the only way to like rig the game is you buying the competition, it's like that's not. Especially like if the way you're handling the things you bought, this is what we're getting. But like Redfall is like, no, I don't want you to be fighting like that, because you're just like furthering the sentiment that you're just not good at making games, which is not true. I
No.
know you can. I lived the 360 generation, an awesome generation
Mhm.
for them. So yeah, do
Yeah.
better, Microsoft. Do better. I'm cheering you on. Like, even though I haven't had a conference from Sony for like 2 years as a main Sony player, I'm cheering more for the Xbox conference to be like, to show like I just want Microsoft. I really want Sony to really be like, and I'll just feel like I want those kings to feel threatened,
I
because then
understand.
they're gonna fight for it to stay on top instead of being by default. But right now, it feels like by default they're winning, and that
Yeah.
sucks. That really sucks. So
Yeah, I understand. But I wanted to see if one game in particular is a winner to you, and that is Horizon
mhm.
Forbidden West Burning Shores. I want to hear all about it, but before we begin, I want to let people know Horizon Forbidden West Burning Shores is available on, of course, on PS5. It is an expansion to Horizon Forbidden West. If you need to play Horizon Forbidden West in order to play Burning Shores.
Yeah.
So that said, if you haven't played Horizon Forbidden West all the way to completion, we will be talking about spoilers about that game as well.
Yeah,
I just want you to know.
it's hard to talk about Burning Shores without talking about like what Forbidden West, like what main Forbidden West was. So heads up,
Exactly.
people.
Exactly. So go listen to a Horizon Forbidden West thoughts, on previous episodes. Also go, check out everything that Al is completely doing on Season Gaming and, on the X Button podcast, if this is where you're signing off to come back later. Without
Mhm.
further ado, though, we're about to talk about the topic of the show, and that is Horizon Burning Shores. I am so eager to hear your thoughts. So,
Yeah.
first off, what did you think about the DLC?
So I feel it was definitely what started as just more Horizon
Mhm.
was something that was both good and bad, because more Horizon's cool. Like I like Horizon. It's a franchise that I think I talked about this last time I was in the show, that it's crazy how much I love Horizon, but it's just a franchise that just doesn't stick in my mind.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted it to. And at first, when I started playing this DLC, I was like, "Yeah, it's more Horizon," but I'm not sure I'm quite feeling it, because it's been so long since I beat Forbidden West back in 2022. I feel this DLC could have come a little sooner, but I feel like Burning Shores is a small taste of what a true Horizon experience can be, just
Mhm.
in PS5. In a way, it felt, because let's not forget, this was a cross-platform, this was a cross-gen game that didn't look like a cross-gen game like God of War Ragnarok did. That's like kind of like the irony is that obviously a lot of people like wanted to use because God of War Ragnarok is on PS4, it's like it's not as great, like it's not as grand or as beautiful as it could have been, because it's trying to be built on the old console. Like Horizon didn't have the problem. It's like it was built on both consoles, but you look at that PS5 version, you're like, good lord, this was pretty. There's like some big sides to this and all that, but I feel like Burning Shores is a good taste of like what an Untethered from last gen version of Horizon could be, and that shines through more like as soon as you get out of like the first initial areas. Like the Horizon has always been insanely pretty. Burning Shores manages to be even prettier. Exactly. And the very end of that DLC is like the level of scale of that. Only Jedi Survivor has a very similar section that uses next gen, like a next gen potential to its fullest to show like why these are things that can only happen now with the newer hardware that we have. And the story, I would say, like maybe not super memorable about Burning Shores, but I think it added some humanity back to our main character that wasn't there in Forbidden West. I feel it had a more clear cut villain than a more generalized villain than what we saw back in just main Forbidden West. I feel the flow of levels we had here felt like a nice nice condensation of the flow of Forbidden West into like a nice 8 to 10 hour DLC. And I just can't wait to see like the things that Guerrilla built upon with what they teased us they can do now with Burning Shores for like the full on last third game of this alleged trilogy. So it was a much better DLC than I was expecting. I think it's definitely better than the Frozen Wilds, which was the DLC from Horizon Zero Dawn. Both had the same problem with onboarding because this is just adding more to what's already there. This is not the infamous Festival of Blood or Spider-Man Miles Morales like standalone DLC. Which they treat those as its own standalone game, so you can jump there at no problem because it's gonna reacquaint you. Like this DLC does everything but reacquaint you with the nuances of Horizon, and Horizon I feel is not. There's a level of complexity to the gameplay that's not congruent to jumping back in just like that and be like, yeah, I'm just gonna pick up. It's like there's so much like, oh crap, I had all these bows with all these different elemental things. It's like, oh yeah, it's like I need to get back into the mindset of killing machines by doing the Dead Space style of like I have to focus on this section of the machine and then this other one to like weaken it up or use some elements to start like doing AoE attack. Like it can do like damage over time and AoE attacks to everything around it if they're like affected. It's a very complicated game that I feel like many people, if they have not been, I feel this DLC is the best for people that got into Horizon late. If somehow they were playing Forbidden West a year after it came out around this time, or were doing their platinum run, if they drop the game afterwards, like this DLC is like prime for the people that are already in it. I don't think I recommend it for people that have been like long gone and don't remember, because it's gonna be like it can take a while for it to really click. But once it clicks, it's just like it's to me like the Avatar movies. It's like you may not think about them, but then when you're in, you're like, all right, this is really great. This is actually really good. And then when you finish, and big game comes out afterwards, then you don't remember much about it until you start talking about it. I feel like that this franchise is just cursed for that, and that makes me sad.
I'm right there with you on a lot of those thoughts. I echo that this isn't a pick up and play friendly game by any means. It's one of those you almost have to like make your muscles remember how to play this game. So you do have to be in that mindset. I will say I love this DLC. I think this is like. Honestly, this is probably my favorite piece of Horizon content.
Like, I was thinking about it. It's like I think I really did enjoy the quests that were in Burning Shores more than I did a lot of Forbidden West and even Zero Dawn.
Yeah, it feels more focused. It feels very much more focused, more contained, and I honestly like. Like I was gonna save this for like the ending of our conversation, but you kind of like brought it up already. Like the way that this is confined almost makes me want more Horizon in that vein of a Uncharted Lost Legacies, in the vein of a Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like if we can get like smaller 5 to 6 hour experiences, I almost feel like that's where Horizon would actually shine.
Yeah, and I feel like it would allow more people to experience them fully. And maybe they could launch them at appropriate times where they're not like literally hogging the space of other more anticipated games, which it's 3 for 3 now, because was anyone talking about Burning Shores when Jedi Survivor came out?
No,
unfortunately not. So it's like they're just kind of that franchise that it just like gets hogged up by behemoths around it, and maybe like a smaller experience, like releasing at a better time would be the play for them to, because when I really experienced all of this, I was like, that was like a nice, like really beginning, middle, and DLC for this. It's like I feel like satisfied, and I feel that also helped because just taking cues from Naughty Dog. The fact that you have a partner with you, like
I
almost all
love
the
it.
time, that
Love
was
it.
like, oh, so this is what Aloy needed. She
Hmm.
needed someone that was as strong mentally as she is, and someone that she could like bounce back and forth, that can bring a humanity that I know it's inside her. For if Forbidden West did something wrong with Aloy, they made her too stubborn. They made her too headstrong. They made her too driven, uh,
Stoic as well.
and stoic in a way that I didn't remember her being this stoic in Zero Dawn. I liked Aloy a lot for her
Hmm.
story in Zero Dawn. In fact, like I really like this version of her trying to reject the white savior mentality that can permeate a lot of like this Native American style like stories that was saddled on her, and she just not embracing that, but kind of now going for it because that's how people see it, but that's not what defines her. She's just very driven, and I feel that Forbidden West like missed a little bit on that in the story. That's why like I like the story of Zero Dawn a little bit more, because it was about finding out where she came from, who she is, what's her
Hmm.
role in this world, and how the world can keep going through after seeing what was needed to be done to reset it with when the machines got like went rampant and all that. So yeah, it's like her having Seika was the name of
The partner, yeah.
of the partner. It was like, man, it's like, yeah, this is. I feel like I'm playing Uncharted: The Lost Legacy or something on that vein. It's like I like their back and forth. I like how useful Seika can be in combat. The combat of this game is already really cool,
Hmm.
and having someone else that feels like that, I'm thankful I'm not have. At least when I played it, she didn't have like a down state, so I
No.
didn't have to like help her. So if it felt like she could hold her own, and I could still focus on the combat at hand. And I'm glad that she's with you 90% of the time, so it's not just Aloy talking to herself, which in Forbidden West was unbearable, especially with how this game next to God of War Ragnarok, they were like focus tested to death to pretty much tell you, oh, I think I may have to climb that, or maybe if I shoot this thing over here, I can do that. And so it was like having her being chatty with someone else made more sense than just Aloy talking to herself.
Yeah.
So,
And like that's almost like the PlayStation formula right now of
mm-hmm.
having a companion to kind of bounce things off of. But like
Yeah.
it's that tried and true formula. The buddy cop, like the
Mm-hmm.
buddy cop thing works. It's been working in Hollywood forever, and it works in games like
Mm-hmm.
Atreus with Kratos, like
Yeah.
Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Even Nathan Drake, like in Uncharted 4, had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people to bounce off of.
Oh yeah,
It's
and that was like
something.
the big problem with Uncharted 3. If you remember
Yeah.
that, a lot of that game he was by himself,
Hmm.
and that is just not as fun when your main character has to quip to himself just to try
Yeah.
to fill up space. It's just so much better to have someone with you, especially in this case. This is Sony's first open world where you have a constant companion at least the majority of the time. Obviously, there are times where Aloy is by herself, maybe in the way to another quest and all that, but for the majority's sake, it's with you. Really glad like how it portrayed again like a hidden group that's very close to what was this chick that helps you. Was it Beta?
Yeah. Beta.
In
Hmm.
the Beta, so it feels like it's part of like that same group that she got separated from like back in Forbidden West,
Hmm.
and again like just keep world like building up this world, which I feel like it was the strength of Forbidden West. Zero Dawn was the story of Aloy. Forbidden West is the story of the world.
Yeah. It is.
I feel like and how the world can like withstand like another cataclysm that's coming soon. I feel this does the thing that I like what God of War Ragnarok let you do after you finish the game. It
Hmm.
feels like it keeps what's coming room to breathe. I
Yeah.
feel like if Forbidden West was a little too blatant in setting up a third game,
And too abrupt. Yeah.
yeah,
It's just like.
and it just ends, and you'd be like,
Mhm.
yeah, there's another thing's coming, and there wasn't much that you could do afterwards unless you left quests to do.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like there were more things that opened up after you were done. So that was so abrupt that I feel this Burning Shores DLC at least gives that it gives that this in between space some room to breathe.
And it
Like
adds weight to that. That it makes
yeah.
like the way like Seika feels that weight when she
Mm-hmm.
hears about the news that the world might be ending in a couple of like in the
Yeah.
months to come. It adds weight to that third game. It adds weight
Mm-hmm.
to the stakes of that. Whereas
Exactly.
in Forbidden West, it just felt like, oh, okay, there's a third game and we have another antagonist to fight.
Yeah, it was like it was too late in the middle chapter in a way
Hmm.
that it didn't feel like it was building to be that. That was what's so weird about Forbidden West, which is why like my opinion of it like lowered it right at the end. After I was like so high on Forbidden West because I like I mentioned many times, like I love my sequels that build upon the strengths of its predecessors, and I feel like this built on the strengths of the systems, the visuals, the world, like the world design and all that. And then the story was like I'm vibing this, and then it just abruptly cuts, and you're like
I,
man. And then on top of that, me not feeling as connected to Aloy was like, yeah, everything was better in this except the story. And I feel like Burning Shores was like, okay, I feel there's more the humanity that was missing was added here. I'm glad. I feel like this fills up the shape of Forbidden West as a complete product more. Sucks that you have to add $20 for that to happen, but hey, it's like, I mean, at least they understood. Guerrilla understood the assignment when it came to Aloy. Like they're just and how realistically, like I understand why Aloy didn't want to saddle this burden in someone else, with knowing that yes, like I just realized that the reason our society is like that is because some sort of cataclysm already happened, and now we know that there's a bigger cataclysm coming. That this far seen civilization, which is like the highly futuristic people we meet at the end of at the middle and become the focus of Forbidden West, which I really love their sci-fi look. Is like that's just the contrast of their like super advanced civilization, almost High Republic. That's so funny. Yeah, if you read the Star Wars High Republic books and then you look at the far seen, you can see where some of those inspirations, like the similarities, kind of come from to like the primitive, futuristic primitive style that we get from like the rest of the civilizations on the horizon. Just knowing that this nemesis or whatever that thing is called, I'm trying to remember that, that wiped them out in another planet, and they're trying to find a way to just escape, which was like the big focus of the big villain for Burning Shores, which was played by Sam Witwer.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, when I started seeing his face, I was like, wait, is that Sam Witwer, a Starkiller from Force Unleashed and Deacon St. John from Days Gone?
So he was the one who played Walter?
Yes. Yeah, the big villain that had the mustache.
Yeah, Walter Landra.
Landra, yeah, and when you're like kind of like in his museum in that section, like I didn't quite recognize it was him until we got to see him in the flesh. I was like, wait a minute, that's is the Leo DiCaprio in the couch and just pointing pointing like, hey, I recognize it. And I remember I sent it to Paul because he's a big Sam Witwer fan. He was like, wait, what? He's in this. I'm like, yep, and. Because Forbidden West didn't have a clear villain. Eventually, it made Carry On Moss's character, which was it Trilla? What Tilda? What was her name? Do you remember? That's my big problem with Horizon. Yeah. It's like
I don't remember.
Those names don't stick in my mind. But yeah, they don't resonate. And Tilda was like played by Trinity herself, Carry On Moss. She was a really cool character to get to see a little bit more insight into why what the civilization that has these weird powers had come from, and knowing that she had an old relationship with Elizabeth Sobek, which was the originator for Aloy. And if for people that paid attention to the dialogue, because we saw a lot of hand-wringing of, oh, why is Aloy a lesbian? Like, oh, look, blah, blah. It's like, this part of the story they set up Elizabeth Sobek was a lesbian with her relationship with Carrie Ann Moss's characters. It's like, whenever you had the chance to have that moment with Seika and a choice you can make, that's not like forcing an agenda. It's that this is part of like what they already set up.
Yeah.
So
and you can kind of like see that throughout her like history, as far as like the way she interacts with like potential male suitors who are always trying to like hit on her and stuff like that. You can kind of the seeds have always been there. It's just like we haven't, like, for the people who didn't notice, you just didn't notice.
Yeah, she was a big, because she was just like pushing out. She didn't reciprocate the feelings with people that you think she would have been with. Like, it would make sense for her to be with the King of Meridian.
Exactly.
Back then. Maybe Varl at a certain time, but then that became more of a friendship. So yeah, the seeds were there, and hey, you have the choice to not kiss. Just saying, like, so you can, even though you know they have feeling, because the way like Aloy, like it brings humanity to Aloy.
Exactly.
Like knowing that she can have feelings towards something, because before that we only knew she had feelings to Rust, right? The guy that raised her, the dad figure that ended up dying way too early in that game. Then we got, if I remember correctly, we get like a little when she's like having like a dying moment earlier in the story. She gets like an hallucination of Rust again in Main Forbidden West. I will have to play again because I haven't played since I beat it. But yeah, it's like probably the biggest achievement and for this is finally rehumanizing Aloy for me. That's probably like they needed to recenter that, because it makes me wonder, like, now that we know there's like the equivalent of Mass Effect's The Reapers with the third game coming with like this, and though in this case it's like this threat seems too far out there and it's not as set up like the Reapers were in Mass Effect. Like, will whatever story they're telling with the third horizon, will they be able to like balance out making this existential threat feel real and keeping focus on the character? That
Yeah.
now we know that there is something worth exploring towards Aloy as a character, other than just like the people around. Because I'll say, even though I didn't connect with Aloy in Forbidden West, I did connect with the cast.
Oh well, yeah. The supporting cast was amazing.
Yeah, like connecting with Varl before, like, spoiler alerts, he dies halfway through the store, and even the chick that was like the girlfriend for Varl, I don't remember her name. Then Aaron, the guy with the with the mustache,
yeah.
So and getting to learn more, like Aloy was a good conduit for us to learn more about like the supporting cast and having that kind of like Mass Effect 2 style, building up those relationships, and even having a few the equivalents of the priority missions of Mass Effect 2 that allow you to build the relationship with those. I like the one that lost his arm, and then you like and then you like through his like companion missions, you get to like re-earn like
Katalo is his name.
Yeah, so him like earning the strength to be able to get another arm, like to be able to use a metal arm after losing his confidence as a warrior after losing the arm early in the story. So it did great on that. Now we know that that can happen while still we can learn more about Aloy. And at least have someone that she can have those moments, because if there was something that I really loved about what Mass Effect 3 did in the midst of the end of the world stuff that was happening there, with Reapers invading, planets being invaded and all that, like all this heavy war stuff, like the quiet moments of Shepard with introspection, where the toll of everything and the pressure of him trying to save all this, like having on him, like both psychologically and with the conversations you're having. I feel like that's something that they need to nail with Aloy.
Yeah.
I wasn't confident they were going to nail that after I finished Forbidden West with how focused they were on everything else but her. Now after Burning Shores, I'm like, okay, I trust them a little bit more that they're able to do that.
So let me ask you, one of my key takeaways is just like I love Aloy because of like who she is around other characters, not so necessarily her herself, but I'm growing to like her as a character. Mm-hmm. What would you say if like Horizon, let's just call it Horizon 3, added a Mass Effect, almost like a Mass Effect or a Dragon Age style of gameplay where you always have two companions with you, and then you're always bouncing forth that dialogue. It changes the gameplay a little bit, but it might give you actually like better story focus, better like intensity with the character.
Yeah, I feel that would be a great way to like introduce this now, because the end of the world is here with the Nemesis.
Yeah.
You can't do it by yourself. That would be a great moment to introduce those kind of companions that kind of aid you, even if you're not having the Mass Effect, like open the weapon wheel to like select the powers to and have to do that. Would be cool. That could be like a nice evolution, because gameplay wise, Forbidden West is so similar to the original one. It's just refined. But if for the way that you handle bows, the way you handle like crafting, and the way you move through the world, is like it's just literally the same game, just tighter. It would be cool for that third game to not just be even tighter, but adding those extra mechanics that would make sense. Because imagine if it's just the end of the world and it's just Aloy moving around. I think it would strain plausibility at that point. I feel it would be cool that, especially because you get a little taste of this in the end of Forbidden West when everyone's with you. When you make the trek to the final base, and depending on some of the choices you make, you may lose one of the companions there, depending on how do you handle recruiting her, like back in the story and all that. I haven't seen if there's a way to have
Regala?
it like the one that was like a savage.
Yeah, Regala.
Yeah, so in mine she died.
Mine too.
Yeah, it does seem that there's a way to like not recruit her or something like that, so she doesn't appear. So it makes me curious to do like a New Game Plus run and just have different decisions with Regala after you defeat her. And
I think you have a choice to spare her or like spare her in that moment or kill her.
Yeah, and then when you spare her, she joins you.
Yeah, exactly. So
where she ends up dying in the big quote unquote suicide mission.
So I think she was going to die regardless. It's like you had the choice to just kill her there or have her killed off later on in the story.
Yeah, and it just makes me curious. Like in the moment she dies in the mission you are in, does someone else take the place at that moment, or that just plays out different? It makes me just want to see if they thought about a little bit more how to make some decisions like make more sense, especially because yes, this game still has have the different conversations with the different NPCs that are very Mass Effect like, or even Witcher, like, but they're not a like Mass Effect is still the king of like the
Oh yeah.
decisions that can like really reverberate in different ways throughout the story, especially in 3 games. It doesn't feel like many of the decisions made in the original didn't carry over to this one,
It,
and
it
because
almost
it's not
seems like
because it's not that kind of game,
no,
even
no.
though it could be.
It almost seems like they're trying to get closer and closer to that marker, especially with like the decision trees in this game, and like when you were at base, like the fact that you can roam around the base, have those nuanced conversations, and then sort of like develop those relationships further if you so choose. It almost feels like
Mhm.
they're trying to like
Yeah,
flirt with the idea a little bit more so in Forbidden
yeah.
West.
I still feel like so many people are so scared of trying to do what Bioware did. It's like
Copy them, man.
just
Copy
copying them.
'em.
It's like what made the Mass Effect trilogy so special was that like all of that had the potential to have so much meaning, and a lot of it had. The only time that didn't matter was at the end. But it's like someone has made the analogy. It's like think about the interconnectedness of the trilogy, like a triangle or like a
Yeah,
diamond. You start in a point here, then in the middle section, like in this middle, is like can go everywhere, but it has to end somewhere. It has to like all come together because it can't just be like an ever expanded thing because then how you can like account for everything. That's just a nightmare to develop. But
hmm
for them doing that, then so many people are like, well, at the end, your choices didn't matter, so why bother? And then many people just decided, well, that's what fans said, so that's how we're gonna stick to that. And to me, that sucks because that felt like Mass Effect was such a moment to be like, hey, this is what can happen. I can't wait to see what others do
yeah,
to build
exactly.
on that. But then everyone just decided, nah, see, like the calamity that was the reaction to Mass Effect 3. We don't want that. Moving on. It's like, I feel developers is chickened out. And I feel like I want more RPGs that feel like their decisions are meaningful. It's like, I may not have been a big fan of Detroit Become Human just as a concept, but I highly respect that Quantic Dream like made a game with such
Almost
like
infinite amount of
insane
choices. Yeah.
infinite amount of choices that can really change how things goes. Like that's why the game took so long to make. And obviously because now with game development is like so complicated right now, so I kind of see it. But man, it just sucks to feel like 2 generations ago they made it look so easy.
They
And
did.
now we're here where they're flirting with that, and I'm like, dude, don't flirt with that, just like commit,
Yeah.
just commit. So,
Speaking of commit, like I want to talk about Bernie Shores' villain, like the
mm-hmm,
fact that he was so diabolical that he Walter Lundra,
mm-hmm,
that he almost like made them commit to being in a cult.
yeah,
Like the way like he makes them commit to his cause, and then the way he kind of like pitted off like girls against each other to see who
mm-hmm.
would become his mate. I feel like there is so much like I guess you could say nuance and layers to his character. What did you think about Walter as a character?
Yeah, I just love the fact that we finally have a villain that could be easily hateable.
Yeah.
Like, because when you think about it, it's like, who was the villain of Zero Dawn?
Oh, don't even remember.
Hades, an AI, the evil AI.
Oh yeah.
That he was a villain. Who was the villain on Forbidden West? You didn't have a clear one. It was just in general the Far Zenith.
Yeah.
That then goes back to just Carrie Ann Moss because uh, you're wanting to fight because you're deciding that you're not going to leave Earth, and she wanted to leave because of the Nemesis coming. So and then she decides to fight you with her like the big robot, and then you kill her. So not really a villain. I feel like with this one with Walter
Walter Lundra.
Londra, like
Uh-huh.
at the very least, like you understand that some of the things that he's doing are kind of effed up.
Oh yeah,
Like,
for sure.
so it gives a face to a villain that then when you fight him at the end, it feels satisfying. It feels satisfying when you actually beat him, especially with such an insane looking boss fight.
Oh
That
yeah.
was that with like the big
Really cool. In
with the
the
Horus, which is like the big. If you play the Horizon games, you've seen like these massive robots that are just chilling like
Mhm.
in the mountain or like remnants of that. You actually fight one of those, and knowing that it's just not you against a faceless giant robot, it was him controlling it while being inside.
Yeah.
Just made a the final boss battle in this one feel meaningful in a way that boss battles in both Zero Dawn and Base Forbidden West didn't.
No.
It's like
Let me ask you, like, the Horus, like I'm trying to I picture it in my mind. Would you best describe that as like a big robotic kraken? Because it
yeah,
almost, yeah, it
yeah.
feels like a kraken, right?
Oh yes, and it is something that I keep telling people like if you have a let's say a 65 inch or like a big ass
Oh,
4K
it looks
TV.
good.
Oh man, this is like if you have been wanting something to really feel like it's flexing that TV,
Mhm.
play this boss battle. Like the only time in recent times of something that can only be like enjoyed it in like a big TV is something that happens in Jedi Survivor halfway through that game, which is ironic that both games played with scale. And I was telling Paul, I was like, I feel bad for Horizon because they're big, like the big notable point where people are finishing Burning Shores was, hey, make sure you get to the end. You have to see this boss battle.
Yeah.
And now Jedi Survivor comes in and be like, hey, get halfway through the game. You'll know it when you see it. So when I play, I was like, oh man, it's like, that's so cool that I got to experience back to back two things that got to flex the power of the next generation hardware that we currently have. And it was just insane that I was looking at with Burning Shores. I remember it was like, wow, it's like, this thing is big.
Yeah,
crap, I have to fight it. The boss fight, a little simple, just like hit some of the weak points and all of that. So I would say like if we have to like make comparisons like with recently released things, like the way that Jedi Survivor mixes its spectacle with like the gameplay that with the gameplay around it felt more congruent than than how you see it here in Forbidden West. Like just like it's just a massive road, but yeah, just make sure you hit the 3 weak points and then you're gonna go in. But it's still the spectacle of it all, like just the massive tentacles, you dodging around, like the game looking so sharp and running so smooth. It was just like a reminder that Guerrilla are wizards with visuals. It's really like,
good.
If Horizon will always have something in there, like a feather under the cap as a franchise, is just being able to do this kind of open worlds, but do them at the highest possible level of fidelity and quality. Yeah. Just like a game that, and especially I have to commend them, like because I finally got to play this after they patched the performance mode. Back last year when I played that, I actually played it on 4K 30 because the performance mode running smooth, but the image was very shivery.
Oh, really?
There was like I was noticing it. It was like it was very jaggy, blurring spots. It was like it had like weird dynamic resolution that I was like, this game is so pretty. I'm really noticing these imperfections. This is weird. This seems weird for them, but then I played it at the 4K quality 30 mode. That was like,
I love it. That's the way I played it.
Yeah, it was like it's so damn sharp. It's actually running well. It's like it's an actual game that they actually optimized the controller to feel good at 30 frames. Because I was telling this to Paul in our episode 100 of the X-Button that Jedi Survivor is very similar. It feels like the Respawn really tuned the controller to feel really good at the 4K quality mode because there are many games, i.e. like for example Cyberpunk 2077. It has a 30 and a 60 frames mode. The 30 frames mode feels horrible in the controller.
It does. Sluggish.
The 60 frames mode feels nice. Horizon feels really great in the controller at 30 frames. It runs so smooth at 30 that I always tell the story. My brother has become a frame rate savant. He plays Warzone competitions. He has a machine that can run Warzone at like 200 something frames. When he was watching me play Horizon one time, he was passing back when I was playing our big controller. He was like, man, it's looking really pretty at that 60 frames. I was like, dude, I was like, I'm playing at a 30. He was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
That tells you sometimes, like, if you have really smooth 30, for the frame rate savants are like, a game can only be playable at 60 frames nowadays. If it's 30, it's just garbage. It's like, F off. It's like, just 60 frames doesn't make a game good.
No.
If it is nice when a game, like, you can play a game like that, but there are some developers that put the work for that to really, for a game to really feel good to play at the highest possible resolution. Credits to Guerrilla. They fixed the performance mode. So getting to play it now at 60 frames with an image that feels so clean that it's like, it's so unrecognizable from the 4K mode, which I'm like, that's, even though I know it's lesser resolution, they did something because this looks so sharp, and the fact that it's running this smooth, they're wizards over there. And I'm glad that they really fixed that within the year.
Oh yeah, and then the character performances as well, like the way Walter looks, the way Aloy and Sayaka and
still the greatest facial animations between like conversations in an open world RPG. Easily. It's like that's not up to debate. It's like this is, you can objectively look at this. It's like you can maybe have problems with the art style. I know, like for example, my buddy Paul has big hangups with like the aesthetic. I don't understand. Really? I don't understand why. Like because he's so anti-caveman.
Oh, I actually love it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, to me, this is not caveman at all. This is like the kind of like post-native American, like a native society, kind of like trying to reach modernism, but still kind of like being like in between. And being with robots next to it is what elevates that aesthetic. Because obviously, I'm not a big fan of like Far Cry Primal, for example. That is pure caveman. This is not that, but he has that hang-ups, and I make the joke that he hates women, but that's just a joke for that. And he can't defend himself. But
No, you're
There's,
right though.
yes,
It is like a sharp contrast in the way they dress. It
hmm
almost reminds me of like there was a show called The 100 that like
yes. Oh yeah, I love
it
the 100, but the
it kind of
CW is
reminds me of,
100.
yeah, it reminds me very much more so like that than it does like a caveman show like the
hmm
Flintstones, you know.
Exactly, yeah, because it's like when I think came exactly, I think the Flintstones.
Hmm.
So, but it's not even close to that. And yeah, dude, the 100 is actually a really great analogy to it because there's like the high futuristic stuff, and then when they go to the planet, it's like it's like this primitive, but not really like it's advanced primitive. Is how I
Yeah.
like how I like calling it. So, so yeah, it's like the aesthetic has always been one that I really vibe in. It's kind of like what I was mentioning to me, like in the Sony stable, to me, Ghost of Tsushima and Horizon are basically the same game,
Hmm.
at least to the core. The addressing is one's a samurai game, and the other one is it's a native style game mixed with sci-fi, and that just vibes with me a little bit more than just a straight up samurai. But both games are really good. So
Let me
that
ask
is
you a
said,
question. I want to get back to Burning Shores, and I
mm-hmm,
want to talk about like some of the new mechs that you get to fight and get
mm-hmm,
to like explore. To one of which is the Water Wing, which is like the almost
yeah,
like almost an underwater pterodactyl kind of, and then the
yeah, that
another one.
allows you to swim beneath, like near the like
Oh,
when you're
so
like,
cool.
I really like how they introduce that, especially because you get one of those with say, sorry, with
Seika.
Seika.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then it's like this gameplay sequence where you have to be going because you don't have your breather. She
Hmm.
has it, so you constantly have to be like going up and down, and there's like potential lasers that are gonna hate you because there's some like anti-aircraft thing that are
So
happening in this
cool.
game. So I was like, that's a nice evolution to the flying mount, which
Hmm.
I will say is I really love that the flying mount is like so primordial to be able to be used in this thing because there's so many like uh separated shores between water
Yeah,
in this DLC. Obviously you can do the God of War style, like let's go to boat and go to boat or stuff, but why would you do that?
you have a flying
You
mount,
have a
man.
flying mount. The flying mount that made like being able to move around the very end of Forbidden was really cool. Sucks that it was near the end, and I
Hmm.
had already done everything because had I known that I was gonna get the flying mount so late, that would have just mainlined and then have the rest of the side quests done, so I
Yeah,
could just fly around everywhere. But I am very OCD with games that I know I'm gonna platinum. I like to do all side stuff at once,
yeah.
and then just get my platinum trophy right when I roll credits.
I
So
understand.
so yeah, it's a
I
so
want
that
another one they released is the Bile Gut. It's like the frog.
God
The
damn it, the freaking frog.
It
That's
was hard.
yes,
So
because
hard.
those are one of the ones that you fight at first,
Uh-huh.
and if you're just coming back to the game where you forget about the flow, having to constantly be like sliding down, like knowing how to scan enemies to know like what are the perfect spots for weakness to use specific weapons and all that, like getting to fight one of those like early on was like they're really cool looking. Holy crap, this is tough. This is kicking my butt at normal at the normal difficulty. Eventually,
Hmm.
I got the flow. Once you get back into a flow Horizon, it flows so nice. It's just mentioned it before. It's just a really hard game to pick up and play immediately, even though it feels like it could be.
Yeah.
There's just there just it has so many intrinsic like depth to it that it's more of an RPG than you would think.
Oh,
It's so
easily.
it's so like it I always keep saying it, if you're only doing the combat in this game where you're just like shooting an arrow at anything just to try to well down the health of a robot, the game sucks. It
Hmm.
just doesn't feel good. And that was what I was telling Paul. He wasn't being because Paul had a long problem trying to get into this game, and I had to really explain to him. He's like, think about it like Dead Space.
Yeah.
Think like be thoughtful of where you're gonna shoot a robot, how you're gonna shoot it. Make sure you mix things like the clicking the right stick to get like
The
to
zoom
get
ins.
the zoom in slow mo to
Hmm.
get to make every shot count. And obviously there are times where it gets a little too hectic that cannot happen, but that is exciting. That to me feels very exciting because it's like hectic, like as the robot's jumping on you, and you're like
Hmm.
just moving around, holding the circle button to do the long roll, or pressing the sprint and then press square to do the slide,
The
and then you start
sliding.
aiming and then
Yeah.
start doing the slow mo things. Like to me, that's a really exciting part of the combat. But I always keep in mind that I can't be too hectic about it. Like I have
No.
to really always be thoughtful. I think that's where the strength of this game is, and why it's so hard to pick up if you stop playing and want to go back to it.
Yeah, and I
That's
think that's what differentiates it from Monster Hunter in a way
mhm.
because they're two very similar games if you really look at it.
Yes,
But
and
Monster
even
Hunter,
it's even harder to
yeah,
pick up Mr. Hunter because there's even more complexity there.
yeah, for
So,
sure, for sure. So the Bile Gut is like a giant frog mech that kind of like
mhm.
also has several stages to its attacks. It can lay
Mhm.
eggs. It can like spit out the
The freaking
poison.
next that you that the
Yeah.
sprout the things that they pursue you is like I was trying to prioritize because those things can be a real pain in the butt.
Oh, for sure. With
So,
the electrical attacks and everything, like
mhm.
so it has that. It can shoot out the poison. It also can jump at you. It's like it to me it feels like this is where Gorilla was kind of flexing its creative like vision in a way to where like this feels creative. It's a form of an enemy that can like close the gap, fight far away as well. Like I love the fact that it's so varied, and I want to see how creative they get in the future because this is a really cool example of like
Mhm.
how creative like some of these enemy types are.
Oh yes, and I feel they really have that in them. It's like I
Hmm.
feel like again it's like I feel like Gorilla is like as a studio because of when they release their games they kind of remain like an underrated studio. Like they're really good. They do really good work, and they just deserve at this point. Now that we got in the two games and now this DLC, and you can even add Frozen Wilds, which was good. It's just I much prefer this DLC way more.
Same here.
Uh, the only thing they're missing now, a proper release date where they're the only thing in town.
It
Or
needs
at
to
the
be a summer release at this
yes,
point. Make it
exactly.
July or
Make it
you
July
know.
where there's nothing else.
Hmm.
Like, just make sure that that Horizon as a franchise doesn't have to hog space with other franchises that are more tried and true that already have kind of like a built-in appeal. And but it was weird because Elden Ring technically didn't have built-in appeal, but that was just more the Souls
Firm
kind of
soft though.
like the From stuff kind of like cachet had been like building up, so that aided in that, and that was just a big hit surprise. That's why poor Horizon Forbidden West didn't stand a chance last year for that. But it feels like they just need to finally be just the only game in town. That's the only thing they're missing.
And another thing is like just make the best story possible because the gameplay is already there.
Yeah,
Like you said earlier, like all we're missing now is like narratives.
yeah.
Like if you
And I
make
know they had it. Zero
exactly.
Dawn had it. So it was like Forbidden West was just a weird step back there when everything else was just so much better. So
It was like the Age of Ultron to where like it was always like it couldn't be great on its own because it had to build so many other different things. Like
mm-hmm,
Horizon Forbidden West had to build the Nemesis, it also had to build Regala's story, it also
mm-hmm.
had to build like what we actually saw like later on with our foundation with like I can't remember what the tribe's name in Burning Shores. What were their names?
Yeah, and again, and try to make things that stick to the mind more, so that
Exactly.
you have to keep looking. That's what's so weird about Horizon. It's like again, like a game that is so objectively great
Hmm.
that misses the stickiness of
The Queen
the
of the
Quinn.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's like they're missing stickiness, and I wonder how much that is because they're hogging the space that they're like hogging is always shared with something else. So your mind may not like always just linger on this one thing.
Yeah.
So it's
Make
like
it
that's
make it memorable too though. Like
mhm.
it's like you can only have that excuse for so long because like in the end like you're always going to share it with something, maybe not like the bigger things, but
Mhm.
like you need to make your experiences as memorable as possible. And that's the one thing I will say against Gorilla, like and like some of the writing there is just like if you're not going to be Breath of the Wild, you're not going
Mhm.
to be Tears of the Kingdom, you're not going to be like games
Yeah.
like that. But like if you make a story like that, you then people have an argument to say like, hey, that
At least
story.
this has the story. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like stand out in another way. Like it's almost like what Phil Spencer was saying in the XCast interview. It's like
Uh,
stand out, but like I don't agree with that philosophy for him,
mhm.
but like in that context, but you do need to stand out on your own. You do need to like find something that differentiates yourself
Yeah,
other than gameplay.
exactly, and especially because the gameplay, like if we flash back to Zero Dawn, when
Hmm.
it came out next to Breath of the Wild, Zero Dawn was taking the Ubisoft Far Cry formula and putting it in a way prettier package and a really cool sci-fi story. But at its core, it was an old school style open world game.
And
Breath of the Wild was like a game with that why people championed it so much was because at a time when open worlds were all following that same Ubisoft formula, here came one that swam against the current and showed,
exactly.
hey, it's like we don't all have to be doing the same thing. We can show you how there is beauty in own player authorship, obviously with a little bit of telling you here's the main objective began and how you do that. I mean, if you follow a thread, you can go get your divine beast and all that, but they give you the biggest like objective that you know how you reach. How you reach that is like it's completely up to you. And as you reach that, then you can have your own discoveries. And that's why like the conversation about Breath of the Wild was so loud because because the game wasn't telling you the things that you were discovering. People were like discovering by themselves, and just like old school gaming was people sharing. It's like, look at this thing that you found. And everyone was like, wait, where was that? That was there? Let me go check. I was like, wait, while I was going to go check the thing you showed, I found this other stuff that wasn't there. So it was like, that conversation became why Breath of the Wild was so big. That it didn't matter that the story was like so bare bones. It didn't matter that maybe technically was not like the visual splendor that was Horizon Zero Dawn. It was because at a design from a design philosophy, it was just doing something different. That now many people are kind of like they're simulating. We already saw that with Elden Ring. That's kind of like taking that idea to the next level. And Horizon has stuck with the Ubisoft of it all.
I like that, but just amplify your story. Like
exactly. So it's like it did do that well. And people, you can always say is that they do Ubisoft games better than they do Ubisoft games. The problem is that they're still making Ubisoft games at a time where people are already clowning Ubisoft style games so hard that even though they're making a really, really, really good one of those, it's still one of those. So it's like, that's not your differentiating factor. And then when Forbidden West at this time around didn't have like a memorable story either.
Yeah.
On top of releasing a game on a style of game that, because Elden Ring was like a reinforcement of like, yeah, Ubisoft style open world games, that's done. It's like, yes, they're gonna keep doing it, but that's not what players want. Players want this other stuff. They needed to differentiate themselves and be like, hey, there's the story of that thing. Like, you have to see it for yourself. That's like really good. Forbidden West didn't have that, so them doing a much better Ubisoft game didn't move the needle. It was like, yeah, it's like we know what it is. We know like it's like maps that are like you have your towers that you can like then unlock, and then it unlocks the map. There's some question marks. You follow that question mark, it may lead you into like a quick activity or maybe a side quest and all that. But it's like discovery is premeditated in Horizon, and like Ubisoft games is like Ubisoft games tells you just go there. What is there? Find out. But we tell you that's there.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring was like, we're not giving you any question marks. Just by the own design, the old diegetic way we're designing this world, you're going to find those things that we could have told you were there. And it just feels cooler for the player because like, I found that, even though it was designed for me to find that. But they trusted they trusted their own design chops to be able to empower the player with that. And we had that conversation. I feel like the next evolution for open worlds will be whoever keeps that player agency as you explore things, but the narrative is like high caliber.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things to where I'm looking at like, I don't even expect every game to be like Breath of the Wild or Elden Ring, but I would like if you can make this type of game, but with like a good example would be like Far Cry 3 New Vegas, like that level of story.
Or you mean Fallout 3 New Vegas?
Yeah, New Vegas. Yeah,
Far Cry 3.
Yeah, I said Fallout.
Fallout.
Yeah, but like you make that kind of story that people remember, because that's what a lot of people remember about that game, about that expansion is that. The story of that.
Exactly. And New Vegas, a full new game, but it was technically an expansion because it looks so similar to Fallout 3. It made such a much better story with more meaningful, like great consequences. That's why like it was able to stand out and is considered one of the all-time great RPGs.
Yeah.
It was how they portrayed their story.
You just do the same thing with Horizon. Just make a game with a really good narrative with some consequences, like almost Mass Effect 2 this thing. And I feel like you really stand out in your third game.
You know what's ironic? The writer for New Vegas wrote Zero Dawn and Forbidden West.
You are kidding me.
Yes, Jose Gonzalez. Yeah.
That is insane. Like, it doesn't feel like it. It really
doesn't. You're right.
Maybe
so because of maybe the structure, because if they're trying to do a kind of story in a Far Cry style Ubisoft game, maybe that's why. It's not like a full-on RPG. So, but he was the one, and I have to credit him that, at the very least, I have to give credit to the world building.
Yeah, it's great.
World building is great. It's just narrative where... we got the personal story out of the way with Zero Dawn. That worked great. That was great back then. We had a more broader, less memorable story with Forbidden West. You gotta keep the broad and the intimate, like be able to like merge it together. Yeah. We know they can do it. We know with Bernie Shores keeping it more smaller, like more personal, worked for me. Like it's still like it left a better impression of the characters than usually. Like, hey, I remember Seika this time.
I do.
This is not. So that tells you a lot. Like it tells you a lot that this is not a game that I had to like look up in Wikipedia. Say, what's the name of the mustache guy? Is that Aaron? Okay, what's the name of the black dude that you helped in the original one that followed you at the beginning? Oh, that's Barles. There's many things that just don't stick in my mind. I mean, the Carry On Moss character, like I think it's Tilda. You can look it up. I don't know,
Yeah.
but so and even Silence, which
Oh
R.I.P.
man, I was
That
just about
that
to ask you about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I wasn't realizing how much it was gonna like hit me like a truck seeing him,
Hmm.
like because he's the first character you meet in this DLC to kickstart the DLC. And what makes it sad is that it is so clear to me that there were big plans for him for the third game.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And I know that because I want to believe in that there's some how can I say this? That there's integrity in Gorilla, that they're not gonna AI their way out of this.
No,
That
no.
that they're gonna like accept the fact that we lost such a great actor and something's gonna happen in between games where they're gonna write him out.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm in that awkward spot where in Destiny, like Zavala, which is like who was voiced by him, they record some things ahead of time, so I have to hear new stuff from him for a little bit. But I also have to see how they're gonna write out what's basically the face of the NPCs of that game. It's like
Wow.
so it's like Lance Reddick, like such a powerhouse, like an absolute powerhouse, and the few work that he did, the little work that he did in this was just a reminder of that.
It really
And
was. He only
yeah,
had 2 scenes in this whole thing, really.
that and it still made an impression of
Hmm.
like, man, he was able to do so much with so little. If I had a little bit of a disappointment with Forbidden West was that I wanted more of Silence.
Hmm.
He was so early, and then we only got to see him like near the end when he was like so prominent in the original in the original one. So if the third one would have given us more, it's like it's so sad. And unless they keep their model and try to recast the voice, but that would still feel weird because, to be fair, because Aloy is not they model a different actress, but Ashley Birch does
The voice for it.
does the voice. So maybe they could go that route, just like find someone like maybe David Ramsey, like John Diggle, like
Yeah.
and just the voice, but keep like the character model. But we'll see. Like they have to figure that out whenever we get this third game and however long that takes.
Maybe so. It might be a case to where, like, like she, I don't know, that we could speculate on that when it's closer, when it gets announced. But like, yeah, I really do miss him. I really do love.
Technically, we already got a quote unquote announcement from.
Yeah, that's true.
From,
That's true. I was
When
just waiting for a trailer.
a trailer actually seeing it with a name, with an actual name.
Yeah.
Yes, we can speculate that. Now we know that they're making that third game and a multiplayer Horizon game
Yeah.
that we knew was like in the works. On top of knowing that there's a remake for Horizon Zero Dawn, that was kind of like teased that. I tell
don't-
you,
I don't think Gorilla's doing the remake, right?
they're not. No,
Uh-huh.
apparently it's like they're kind of overseeing someone else is trying to do like the visual remake of that, but
Mhm.
that still feels so. It feels achy for me because
It's too new.
it's too new. It looks good already.
Mhm.
Like I tell you, it's like when I finished Burning Shores, as I was waiting for Jedi Survivor to launch, I popped in Zero Dawn again to kind of like start a fresh run. I was like, I'm kind of like in the mood. I'm gonna go back to this, and some faces look weird because the facial animation is probably the thing that got the biggest uplift from
Yeah.
Zero Dawn to Forbidden West. But in general, Zero Dawn is still one of the greatest looking games that you can play right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
At that PS4 version, especially since they patched the 60 frames per second for free
Hmm.
on the PS4 version. It's like what a remake could do, only that trying to make it look more uniform with Forbidden West. It's like you can say it's like, well, that's what Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us Part 1. Difference there was that was a 9-year-old game, and even then, like as much as I really like that remake, that was one of my favorite things that I played in last year's bearing release schedule, because they just don't have asset. Like from visual quality, Last of Us Part 1 was really good. It was still something that I'm having a hard time saying that it was worth the effort. It's like I'm glad that it turned out good, but it's still something that is like the remastered version of that's still pretty good. It was like you could have it as that, but with Horizon's harder because it's a much newer game. But we'll see
Yeah.
when they when they release it. But I do feel that maybe the Horizon as a franchise is being a little overestimated by Sony in a way. That they say like, yeah, it's like Horizon is such a strong franchise that it can like handle a remake, a multiplayer game, and a third game, and a rumored MMO that's being done by NCSoft and the Netflix show. So it feels like I like Horizon a lot, but I don't feel it's like kind of like if it's a franchise that is worth this extra like spread, this extra pollination. It feels like a franchise that should be respected a little bit more with like the once in a while release. as long as the once in a while release is properly timed and not next to like an all-time great video game.
It
So,
almost feels like they should have all this stuff should have been announced after the trilogy was complete. At least
I
let
would
the
agree.
trilogy be complete for that. I got two questions for you before we
Mhm.
conclude on this Horizon for Burning Shores deep discussions. I want to talk about the setting of the game,
Mhm.
LA, and then I want the overall recommendations. Do you think this is worth $20, and do you think people should get it? So, what did you think of LA, and what do you think about the game overall? Is it worth
So,
it?
so at first, my initial impression of LA was, I feel like I'm in the San Francisco map again.
It's same here.
So it was like, that's why my impression was like negative at first. I don't even remember when we started it. I was still in my middle of my Star Wars kick, and I was like, I tried Horizon, and I went back to Battlefront 2. That's kind of how it was, because it was like, okay, this kind of looks like San Francisco again. So visually, it didn't like immediately grab me. It's just when you go deeper in that you're like, okay. I said, when you see the Hollywood sign, when you go into like the Jurassic Park place,
Oh,
and
that
even
was
some of
so
like
cool.
it's some of like the inside places, you're like, okay, they are able to find the uniqueness out of this very similar looking place. Uh, Eventually, it doesn't make a great first impression. If you, especially if you had the last part of that game is in San Francisco, that's like where you do the final quest before you move into the end. So that's why like initially it was like LA didn't make a. I feel the Frozen Wilds at least looked initially much different.
Yeah.
That I will give Frozen Wilds more. Is that then when you start like diving into the quest and the characters and all that, like to me, LA becomes like second nature, and then eventually is Visual Splendor when you find like the fire. That's when
Yeah.
you're like, okay,
And the Hollywood sign and everything.
yeah, when I see the fire, and then like some of the insides, like the museum for Walter, and
Oh yeah.
and kind of like that ship that you go inside it, like to go scan, and then it shuts down, and then you get like, some of the enemies that come in. That's when you get the automatic weapon
Hmm.
that is like an auto
I
rifle. That's
love that.
yeah. That's what I was telling Post. It's so good that you can like combine. It's like if someone's from far away, keep using your bow. Someone gets up close and personal, get that thing
Boom.
in, and just like shoot them.
It's
Uh,
almost like a shotgun. Is
yeah.
what kind of what it feels like.
Yeah,
And
it's like an auto rifle shotgun,
mhm.
like a quick to shoot, but like a wide spread. So, which makes sense because the bow and arrow has to remain like a viable. Usually, is the majority of the weaponry here. But yeah, LA not a great first impression. Eventually, it
No.
won me over, but I feel like maybe they could have had a better place for it
I
to.
I was hoping, yeah, I'm right there. I was almost like hoping they would do more like a Seattle type because they'd at least give you a lot of like different locales to kind of work with or something, or even
Maybe
like
more rain, like a more overcast and all
yeah,
that. It's like it just looks so similar to San Francisco. So that's why I was like,
exactly, or even Mexico would have been cool, like to explore all of Mexico and kind of see
it
what
would
is
have given
over
us a little
there.
bit more desert. I would have preferred that.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing, like me that I am from El Salvador,
Mhm.
getting this like beaches and green tropical things don't resonate with me because I feel like I'm looking outside. I like things that don't look like what I see. So I have a big trouble with like tropical. Like to me, how I say it is like your game has to be so damn good that I can get over the fact that you're in a place that looks like my backyard. So or like 30 minutes away from me. It's like that's always kind of like my bar.
Mhm.
The game just becomes so pretty, and then eventually has like some unique places to look at, that then it was able to overcome that initial bad impression for me. It's like not feeling that. I visually, it's like I'm not sure about this. It's like this is not distinct enough, like I would have wanted. But
I
as for
understand.
as for if I recommend it, I feel $20 is pretty cheap for this.
I
I
actually
totally
think this. I think this almost could have been a full expansion. Almost.
at 40. I think this could have been a 40 because I know that I have a bunch of side squads that I didn't even do. I just mainlined this, but out of necessity because I was getting ready for Jedi.
Hmm.
But it was like still getting at 8 to 10 hours out of this for $20.
Not bad.
Full 2 full days of playthrough. Like I didn't have to work those days, so I could just dedicate time to it. I was like, yeah, it's like I feel satisfied with what I got out of this. The length of this feels like Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I'm not even kidding,
Yeah.
and that's even more expensive. That was even a more expensive game. So like from value proposition, I feel like they price it right. Big problem with this is you can only access this DLC after you finish Forbidden West.
Yeah. For sure.
So that, and if Frozen Wilds had an advantage, was that the DLC was inserted before, like sometime way before the final battle of Zero Dawn,
Hmm.
because Frozen Wilds is like something that, yes, you could get your ass kicked if you decide to go there early if you haven't installed, but it's something that you can access
Yeah.
because of when it's inserted. Maybe it doesn't feel as essential, but it was more Horizon. In this one, at the very least, this DLC does feel a little bit more essential, but it also comes like with the caveat that you have to beat Forbidden West, at first, and your mileage may vary with how you feel about Forbidden West. I really like that game. It was my third favorite game of
My second.
2022. I know yours was God of War,
Forbidden West.
Forbidden West, and then Elden Ring. Me was initially God of War, then Elden Ring, and then and then this one. So it's like I fundamentally like that. It's just more that I feel, again, we know how Horizon resonates with us, but for some reason some other people may not resonate as highly with this, or may still like it. It just depends on how you're feeling about more Horizon. Because that's kind of like what it is at its core. It's just that this more Horizon is a really good Horizon. It's probably some of the best Horizon Horizon has had. So
I would say, yeah, I like I told you earlier, I think this is the best overall story Horizon has presented us as an overall narrative. I think like it shines. I feel like there's not a lot bloat here. Like I feel like there's a purpose to almost everything you do. It doesn't feel like you never had a fetch quest. So I'm like, everything about this game felt like it was trimmed meat. All the fat was gone. Everything about it.
And even good. One that may have feel like a fetch quest, which is you getting the things to be able to scan the water.
Oh yeah, but that was quick.
The waterway, but that was like so quick. I played more like annoying fetch quests in Horizon than this one. So this one is like, it feels like Horizon distilled, and there's just something so cool about a distilled experience, and that's what Burning Shores is. Again, mileage may vary. It all depends on how much you really like Horizon. If you do enjoy Horizon, I say give it a shot.
I'm the same. If you don't really like Horizon as a franchise after the first two games, this ain't gonna change your mind.
Yeah, because it's just more of that. So one more of a game you probably didn't resonate with, like it's not gonna make you resonate even more. Though I would say that from if you really want to see like a really cool spectacle, I feel that final boss fight is worth the price of admission, or just to give you an idea of what your like bulky ass PS5 will can actually do, like untethered from any like last gen stuff. Like I told you, that was the first time this generation that I felt was like, I feel like finally I'm seeing like what this generation can really do, and I forget how impactful that can be, because you reach in the initial years of a console generation, you sometimes plateau with that. Yes, like this looks familiar, but it definitely looks better. To like, oh, so this is what can actually happen now, and you feel like those things can never happen, and this was a reminder that they still can. So. And getting that with a similar looking big scale moment in Jedi Survivor, like a week after, I was like, oh, I'm eating good with like the current gen stuff right now. So
normally towards the end of the show, I'm getting into the habit of asking all my guests what game they would recommend to people, but I feel like yours would be Jedi Survivor right now. Am I right on that money?
Absolutely, like totally. Even with some of the technical issues, I would say I recommend it in console. PC, keep looking Digital Foundry, keep like looking tweets, like. Assess the state of that version. That version is not good.
Wait until it gets better.
But wait until it gets better on PC. But on console, absolutely. Even with some of his technical problems, like especially if you're a Star Wars fan, I'll say this because I feel like we had that conversation with Jedi Fallen Order. It's like, as a Star Wars fan, that elevated the package that was half cooked in some areas, but it was like a nice first step. I feel like Respawn this time made a really great game by itself. That nailing Star Wars, that was a great cherry on top. Last time, it's an even bigger cherry on top with this one.
Oh, that's nice to hear. That's great to hear.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely Jedi Survivor. Total, highly recommended. You can read my review over at seasongaming.com, and then once you're done playing that game, if you want like a spoiler cast that talks deep or some of my deeper thoughts, you can look at episode 100 of the X Button, available now.
For sure. So that's a good segue. Like, where can the good people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at _Segovia. They can find me on Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93, and they can find my podcast the Escape Gaming Presents the X Button over at Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, many different services that you can find podcasts, and also on YouTube, which apparently now, if you put things on YouTube, you can now start creating podcast playlists from YouTube. So I started doing that today. I was like, oh, I'm gonna like take the playlist and smooth it out and be like, yeah, the podcast is available there on YouTube now. And my written content at seasongaming.com currently. I have my own blog called thecriticalcorner.com. I haven't done much writing stuff there, so you find my stuff at Season Gaming.
For sure, for sure. So, what are you going to be playing for the next couple of weeks?
So, right now I'm going to try to push Wind Waker as far as I can, and then Tears of the Kingdom. It's like Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, it's just going to consume my life. I'm going to review Tears of the Kingdom for Season Gaming, and then after that, it's like we'll see when I beat Tears of the Kingdom. If it's around the time that Diablo 4 comes out, maybe I'll start playing that. But then my next big game will be Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah,
that comes out in June 22nd. So I'm eating real well, real good this summer in a way that I haven't eaten in the summer. Like probably the last summer that I sort of ate really well, but it was still like, well, at least it's something. Was 2021. I mean, that's when we got Returnal, we got a Resident Evil Village, we got a Mass Effect Legendary Edition, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I would say like decent, but this feels like we're getting like the real meat, the real big meal that you usually are saved early in the year or for the fall.
That's so fun. That's so fun.
And I can't wait for you to finish Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, I'll get right on it. I told myself I'm doing these series of deeper discussions episodes on games such as the one we're doing in this episode. So one of the ones I have coming up is Metroid, and I decided I was going to play my first ever Metroid game. And it's
so if you finish Metroid Prime Remastered, hit me up because I reviewed Remastered earlier this year. So
for sure. So yeah, I will finish that, and hopefully I'll finish that in this week, and I will jump back on Survivor.
Yeah, and I really want to hear your thoughts on Metroid Prime because I got to review that game having played the GameCube version and finished that GameCube version, so I could like see it on its terms of what it was. You're looking at it as a first time 2023 player, so I really want to hear what you think. So.
Yeah, for sure. So I will definitely let you know. Everyone be on the lookout for that episode coming real soon. In the meanwhile, I've been Sebastion. That's been Alejandro. You can catch me at the Single Player Experience podcast, where all your favorite podcasts are available and such like that. You can catch Alejandro at Season Gaming, as well as all your favorite podcast platforms with the X Button Podcast. We have been the best combo that you'll find on the internet, and we're out. Peace, everyone.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hey, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, hit that like button. Also, for more videos just like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right here. Thanks again for watching the video, and for more like it, stay right here at the Pro Nerd Report channel. So, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button.